Producer and director is what he's known by today, but for Mike Roig, who spent 20 years at Fox, 10 of those years with John Madden and Pat Summerall, only to now become a valuable asset at ESPN, his story supersedes what he does when it comes to work. There is a gripping moment in his life that shaped him to this day, and it involves a promise he made to his mom. I'm Bryan Fenley. This is the Honest Something podcast. And yes, my guest is going to be Mike. And this is a place where we bring on those in sports media and we go beyond just the realm of their career and their work. And yeah, a lot of our lives in this business is attached to our work. But for the purposes of this conversation, we are going beyond that to really get to know the human and personal side of Mike Roig. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe. Here's my conversation with Mike. Here we go. We've got Mike with me, and I'm looking at your attire right now, and I got a feeling, especially with that golf club leaning up against the wall behind you, that you might be hitting the links today.
I actually am. I've had a bad elbow for 2 years, golf elbow, tennis elbow, whatever you want to call it. And it's actually finally feeling really good. So I'm going to try to go out and play right after we're done here.
How are you shooting these days?
You know what? I'm probably a 10, 12 handicap. I got down to an actual four during COVID, believe it or not. So, because that's all we could do out here in Arizona is, there was no sports going on, no sports television. So I was playing 5 or 6 days a week. And that's probably how I got my golf tendonitis elbow. And I got down to a four. I got my first hole in one. So it was a bad time for all of us, including our family. It was a great time golf wise.
The hole in one that you experienced, where were you, and at what point did you know the ball went in the cup?
You know what? It's at my course here up in Anthem Country Club. We were on the fifth hole on we have two courses, so it'd be the Ironwood course, and it was about 135 yards out, and it's a pretty flat hole, and I hit it out there, but the problem was the sun was gleaming off the green, and I just saw a hit went left of the cup, and I was like, oh, it's pretty good. I didn't know it went in, so we walked up to and there was a
Wow.
ball right by the flag, which I thought was my ball, and I went to mark my ball, and it wasn't my ball, and then I went to look in the hole, it was in the hole, so I actually did not see it go in. It was great. It was a great surprise. Ended up winning a free trip to Mexico. So we did that. We waited a couple of years once COVID kind of subsided, so we went as a family. So it was exciting time, for someone that I moved out here. I play a lot of golf now, but it's tough, obviously, as you know, in this business to kind of keep it up. But summers are a time for me where I play the most, where my most downtime is.
You found some downtime to play TPC Sawgrass, and it wasn't just an ordinary round there, not even close.
No. So believe it or not, when I first picked up golf, I didn't pick it up until I was in my, early 20s. I was working with Madden Summerall, Bob Stenner, Sandy Grossman on our NFL package. And at that time, Pat was still the voice of golf. It was my first year at CBS. And we were doing a Jacksonville Jaguars game. And he got us on TPC Sawgrass to play my first golf course ever. I
Wow.
just picked up the court, played across the street at I think it was Rancho Cucamonga across wherever we were, and got out there and played, and playing Golden Tee, hearing his voice for years, and finally going out and playing this course was amazing. I probably shot a buck 20, buck 30, but on the 17th Island Green, and granted we're playing up front at the front tees, it could have been more than 100, 110 yards. I put it about 4 or 5 feet away from the cup. Proceeded to bogey the hole, three putted it, but I got it onto the green and it stuck. So that was kind of where I actually, believe it or not, I fell in love with golf, and I stuck with it after that. And obviously, in this business, um, back then, single, you can kind of go to places, before your event or stay after your event and kind of play golf courses. And obviously, with people we know in this business, they can get you on courses that you see on TV, and you're part of it. So it's been a great ride since then on playing golf and playing with great friends and colleagues on great courses over the years.
If Pat Summerall's voice could have called the way you played that 17th hole, what do you think it would sound like?
Well, I would need you to probably do the voiceover. I can't do it justice, but I would think the verbiage, since I've written many a tease copy for him, and he reads, as we know, normally it's 3 words a second for when you write for somebody. For Pat, you got to make it 4 to 5 words. He's got to be less. It's got to be because he takes his time, kind of enunciates and everything. So it would be Mike Roig at the tee with a 9 iron in the air. I gotta have a freaking pause, right?
Of course.
5 feet from the hole. And then he got lays out and lets his an analyst kind of take over. But it just, that's the greatness of Pat, was he was brief, but he was to the point, and that's what made him. And he let people shine. He let John shine. Let all his Brookshire, all the people he worked with shine. That's who he was.
But wait a minute, you forgot to mention that you got it so close off the tee there, but then you three putted. You seem to forget to include that in how Pat would have called that hole.
Yeah, I think we would have probably cut to another hole, and then it would have back. It would just been they would have shown me just putting it in, and he's like, oh, that's a bogey there. So they wouldn't have seen all 3 putts there. So that's what I think the coverage would have gone if I was producing.
Being as close as you were with Pat Summerall and John Madden, what about them, seeing them privately away from the public? Does the public not know about them that makes them that much more special?
They were always larger than life to me, because I've just started the business. I was a kid in my early 20s, kind of, just looking up to them. So, and at that point, to be honest with you, when I joined their crew, I was with them for 10 years. So I was with them for quite a long time. But when I first got there, it was a point where Pat had just gotten out of Betty Ford, so I was witness to all the great stories prior to when I joined, right? So you hear some great stories when it was wild back then, right? It was believe it or not, it was a lot of late nights. There was a lot of drinking going on back then, but and obviously it changed for the better. But I mean, they had some great stories with John Riggins after practice, or with Mickey Mantle, because obviously Pat back then was with baseball, and stories. I think one of the best stories I heard, now, and they were great stories, but some of the best was, and back then, thank goodness there weren't phones and cameras and social media, but I think they were all at some swanky hotel in Midtown, right across from Central Park, and they were all they were all having libations and a night out, and I think one of the Yankees, it could have been Mantle, could have been somebody else, I don't quote me, but they were trying to bring in one of the horses that from Central Park that had the carts into the lobby, through the revolving door, just kind of like, that's what, and again, it was just fun stories you heard. And to me, I think with them is uh there was always a hang. You always wanted to hang after dinner, the night before the game. You wanted to be part of the hang. You wanted to hear the stories. You wanted to hear not stories of the past also, but stories of our game, and learn. And that was the thing. I think John was a talker. Pat, when he talked though, it was important. So you listened to him. So he didn't talk often, but when he did, you knew it was important. So just like when he was doing play-by-play on TV. So he was a minimalist, and John wasn't, and I think that's why they played off to each other. But just sitting down and being part of that group for 10 years was amazing. I had three. When I first started, I was basically kind of there to handle a lot of things that these days you have special departments for, right? So I made sure I had to have everyone's per diem. So I have envelopes full of money for everybody. My 3 things for John is making sure I beat him to the hotel, and make sure every room he was in was below 68 degrees. He had to be on a low floor, big bed, right? Because of his claustrophobia, right? That's why he quit coaching. So I had to make sure he had to have a low floor, big bed. I had to make sure I had to carry Tabasco sauce on me wherever we went, because he loved to put Tabasco sauce on everything he ate. So it's things that just quirks or whatever, and things that you kind of got used to. But the stories were the best. And for me, coming out of college, or just first start working, you think you know it all, right? You're kind of like this hotshot kid, and then you realize you're not, when you listen to him, and you kind of one day, I think John had enough of me. He made me wanted me to diagram a football field, everything, hash marks, everything. Tell him how long a field was, how wide it was, and everything. And I don't think I got it 100% right, So he says, until you know it all, listen, right? So that's kind of where I kind of learned, again, those were my formative years. So it was my foundation, and I learned so much, and that's where I kind of take to even where I am now as a director, from what I learned from John, Pat, Bob, Sandy, and that whole group.
When he said that, when John Madden said that to make ensure to ensure that you are listening more, when do you think he listened to you the most?
It's funny. John, even with when sitting behind when I became an AD, I think it was probably my fifth year with a crew, and I got to be in the truck behind Bob and Sandy and kind of see how they interact. But John would listen to me if there's something I saw, and it would almost be like I'm Pat Summerall. I'd be very brief, and it would be only if it's impactful. If I saw something, I would get in his ear, and he would have the trust in me to repeat what I said. Oh, just something like, oh my God, I think a Milky Way wrapper just came out of Nate Newton's, something funny, just something, out of kind of maybe non-football. I'm never going to tell him anything footballish unless I saw something, but it was just something random or just something where he can tell a story and be who he is and be the storyteller and kind of be the great analyst that we all expect him to be off the field and entertain us. That's what I would do. So if I got his ear for something, I said, hey, there's something I'm seeing down here. Oh, hey, there's a fight going on here, a skirmish, or hey, there's some fun stuff going on down here. He would go with it, and there would be a trust level there. So those are the times I would go and get in his ear, but it'd be rare. It'd be more with Bob, our producer, or Sandy, our director, and kind of leading him as well. So it's a give and take a lot with that group.
And you got in Brent Musburger's ear to voice your voicemail. And how do you get to that stature in life to get that to happen?
It's one of my greatest accomplishments ever because he had to do it twice. The first time he did it, I had to have a software reboot on my phone. I had to get a new phone, so it got totally deleted. There was no cloud or whatever. So I had it; it was gone, and I was working. I worked with Brent on our Big Monday package on Big 12 basketball for a number of years, and that's where we became close. And then when I came and asked him to do it again, and believe it or not, I had a script for this, and he actually read the script verbatim for me, and it was amazing. So he did the first time, lost it. I asked him to do it again. He goes, Roigi, I'll do it one more time, but any more after that, I have to charge you. So just Brent, just classic Brent. And Brent was just amazing to work with those couple of years. It was him and Bobby Knight for a couple of years, and then Fran Fraschilla kind of came back again for a couple of years. So I got to work with him before he went to the SEC for a little bit, and then he just kind of hung it up. So I got him on the very end, but he was awesome to work with. Again, one of the best. Having to say I worked with Pat Summerall and Brent Musburger in my career, and not just like one-offs, right? Having to work with them for a number of
Yeah.
years is amazing, and I've taken so much about who they are. Again, not to take myself seriously, because Brent never took himself seriously. He took his job seriously, but never took himself seriously. And that's where I kind of learned that phrase. I remember there was that time where he got his hand slapped because of what went on in the national championship in football with the Alabama quarterback's girlfriend.
Yeah.
And we did right after that was over, we did a West Virginia game, and you know how fans are these days; they're all over everything, right? There were big heads of the girlfriend all over the place, right? Just all these fans, especially in West Virginia, they're on top of it. So in the break, I'm showing it to them. I'm showing like, oh man, these kids are crazy. I'm not gonna put this on the air, right?
Yeah.
Especially after what's happened and transpired. And Ben's like, come on, Roy, come back with it. Let's go with it. It's just something that I would never think that he'd want to do. And he surprised me. And, obviously went through it, did it. And it was very tastefully done and kind of,
Yeah.
but it was something I would think he'd want to avoid. And it wasn't. So to me, it was something where it's like, you know what? He doesn't take himself seriously. He's gonna, he takes his job seriously. And that's kind of where I got that kind of phrase from.
You got a lot from him. You got a lot from others who you mentioned who you've worked with over the years. What did you get from your mom as we look at your upbringing growing up and the key tenets that she bestowed on you?
I think a lot. I think it's, I grew up with so I'll start from the very, very beginning. My mom is Vietnamese, was in Vietnam and South Vietnam during the war. My dad served in the war for the U.S. Army. That's where they met. I fell in love, got married. She came back to the States until he finished his tour. Came back, I was born. And a year, maybe less than that, my dad left my mom. So for me, knowing that there's a young lady in her 20s when she had me, right? Yeah, in her early 20s, um, has come to a strange country with no family, no friends, the language, very minimal language, no skill. Um, and she did have help from my dad's side with my grandmother and his mom and some aunts and uncles and whatever. So there was help. She wasn't strictly there, but she kind of was, So she's there to raise a child and try to make a better life for us. So to me, the hardworking and her to get a beautician's license, to become a licensed hairdresser, learn the language, move us out of one apartment, a small apartment, into a better apartment or a better neighborhood or to a house, from a rental to ownership. And, so to me, seeing that, how hard she worked, it affected me and wanted me to do well for her and for us. And so just seeing her work, and it's funny, I would go with her to Saturdays to work because I was too young to be home on my own and she
Yeah.
couldn't afford a babysitter. And on Saturdays, on certain in the winter times, I would just hang at the beauty salon and I read the New York Post, the Daily News, the New York Newsday, and the New York Times from front to back and back to front. Right. So that's kind of where it started my love for journalism, right? My love for, and then more tend to more read to the back page, right? More my love to sports. But then when spring and summer came, she'd give me a couple bucks, and when the Yankees were home and had an afternoon game, I'd go to the Yankee game. And in essence, the Yankees babysat me for a number of games and years, which got, I think brought out my love for sports. So even though she didn't know it, right? Because she didn't love sports, she didn't like sports, she didn't care about sports. And why should she? In a way, me seeing her work her way up and doing and becoming who she was and helping me, played into my background, my tenets you're talking about as far as hardworking and kind of being prepared. And then also just my love of sports, being a New Yorker, reading the back pages of all the papers every day, every Saturday, and then or going to a Yankee game and kind of the Nettles of the world, the Lou Pinellas, the Reggie Jacksons, Willie Randolphs of the world, and just loving the Yankees. And then from there, kind of blossoming. That's kind of where it all started.
When she gave you a few bucks to go to the Yankees games, are you by yourself at this point?
By
And
myself.
how old are you at age?
So too young to be at home, but old enough to could walk down the street because she worked across the street she worked in the Grand Concourse, right, a block and a half from Yankee Stadium for all those years, and so it wasn't like I had to get a hop on a subway or anything like that or whatever. So it's a 2 block walk, but I was probably at that time 10, 11, 12 years old. So again, growing up fast, right? Being kind of having a single mom, no dad around, you kind of have to grow up a little faster than most. And, so I would, and at those times, Yankee games are, you've got, I don't know. I don't know if I'd have my children at that age
Sure.
going to games by themselves now. But back then, I would consider things safer back then. I would consider a lot of things safer back when we were growing
Sure.
up as opposed to these days. But yeah, it was probably when I was 9, 10, 11, 12 years old.
When you're sitting in the stands at one of those games, how much of the time while you're watching the action play out in front of you are you thinking of your mom?
Um, I'm thinking about her when I'm purchasing the ticket, at the bleachers for like $3. And I'm thinking about her when I'm getting a popcorn or a Cracker Jack. And I'm thinking about her after the game, right? That's kind of like, kind of the experience I just had after 3.5, 4 hours of experience this. And everything in between is me wanting to be the next Yankee great. Why? I didn't have to be a shortstop, didn't have to be right field, didn't have to be a pitcher. Just being the next Yankee, great Yankee. Being the best, being a New York Yankee. So it was kind of beginning, middle, end. Just thinking about her and what she did, what she's doing for me, and and everything in the middle is kind of what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a New York Yankee at that time. So.
You never were a New York Yankee, but you could think about the stature of a Yankee and what it means, and then you think about what you've done in the business of sports media. And you kind of hit that, and I know you're a humble guy, but you've kind of hit that Yankee status considering all that you've done. So in a way, it's been a self-fulfilled prophecy. But how much was, and you said your mom wasn't growing up big into sports, but how much time did she have with you considering all of her responsibilities? And when she was with you, how would she make you foster those dreams of yours and validate them?
I think back then, like I said, baseball is kind of bigger in my life growing up than any other than other sports. So again, even though my father wasn't in the picture, I had surrogate dads, my best friend's dad, my neighbor's dad, kind of took me under the wing and we'd hang out and kind of have a secondary family when my mom was around. My mom worked. She worked, a lot. But how she fostered it was if my friends were joining Little League, she found a way to, get the money so I can join Little League. When, to whether it's to, if I wanted to, they were joining karate. Okay, have karate lessons. She'd find a way to pay for karate lessons. So it was probably a little less of being on hands on and being there and playing catch because that's not what the expectations were, because I knew what she was doing for us in, as far as out here, the the long term goals, right? I think the short term goals are making sure that she can afford to buy things that I needed. And I didn't want the extravagant things. I didn't need the extravagant things, nor would she give it to me, right? But if it was to keep me busy and keep me out of trouble, if it was something where I had great grades and she was able to say, you know what, here, have some money, join Little League, have a pizza after the after practice or the game. That's what she did. So to me, that still meant a lot than playing catch or being at the games. And again, if it's a Sunday game, she's home. If it's a Saturday, she's not going to be home. She's working, right? So it's understanding. It's like us in the business, working weekend. That's just what our lives are about. So our children have to understand it. So we make it up to them in other ways, knowing that we're not there for recitals or for games. My son's basketball games, but doesn't mean we love them any less. Doesn't mean that doesn't mean that we won't be there the next time. So you just got to make them understand the bigger picture. And I understood the bigger picture at that age because I felt like at that age I was more mature than most people because I had to be. So
You grew up quicker than a lot of others as far as your peers. How much when you were a child would your mom tell you about her own childhood and the challenges that she faced before making her way to the United States?
I think not until I got older, she wanted me to understand because it was rough for her. It wasn't easy. I think when for years my mom tried to get a lot of her family and sponsor them and put up a lot of money to get them over from Vietnam to the States. And finally, I would say when I was 20, once I was about to move to LA full time for when I was leaving CBS for Fox, she got a lot of her family over. And I think at that point is when she kind of explained a lot to me about what she went through. And then just even seeing that half, for me, I felt I was never whole, right? The only family I really had was my dad's side, right? And then my mom, nobody on her side. So having her side of family come, even though I'm older, I'm an adult at that point. I'm leaving. I felt great for her, and I felt great for me. And then hearing the stories of kind of not just what she went through, but what they went through and
Yeah.
what my mom had to do. I mean, she was not working just for me, but she was saving money for them to send to get them over to the United States. So, even when I'm 20 years old or 21 and I'm moving out, she's still trying to get more family. Even after that, she even got more family over. So she was a person that whatever I do, I have that in the back of my mind of what she went through, what she had to, and that's kind of that drives me, right? Just like I'm sure it drives other people, their family and their stories. But that definitely that drives me. And then obviously now having my own family with my wife and children, my wife drives me, my family drives me as well. But you never forget your initial drive and kind of how that propels you forward into what you want to do and love.
It was as if, Mike, early on in your life, you made that calculated decision to make a promise to your mom to say, hey, you did all of this for me. You made all of these sacrifices. The least I can do is do the same in my own life, make those sacrifices and make you proud and be something. And you've done that and more. And as you touched on, Mike, you being a father now, being and having your own family, how much of you being a father now and the way in which you look at what that role is and what it means to you has been what you've learned from not having a father, as a sense of saying you had an emptiness on that side of your life. So how has being a father now helped repair or nurture that side of you?
There's a phrase that I grew up with a long time, and it's, any man can father a child. It takes a real man to be a father to your child. And that's kind of something I've kind of
Yeah,
followed that creed for a
yeah,
number of years. And I'm still estranged with my dad. I know he's wanted to kind of get back in my life and his grandchildren's lives. And at this point, it's not about him anymore. Like, I don't really don't, when I needed him, he wasn't there, and I don't need him now.
sure,
So for me and my children, it's about making sure that I'm a constant presence, even when I'm not there physically, them knowing I'm there. And I guess sometimes, you can talk about the evil side of social media, but
sure.
there's a good side of it as well, right? FaceTiming, emailing, texting. Even like my daughter's a freshman in college now, so I probably lost her priority with her. She's down in Tucson. That's why I'm wearing this, by the way. So I'm not a Wildcat fan, although I am for her. But where she is, and kind of staying on top of her, knowing that I'm thinking about her when she's, she can just text me, hey, think about you, or hey, I'm finishing up class. Just even having those simple conversations, even if it's just that once a day, is great. And I think she knows, and I've had this conversation where, when she was growing up, and she's the oldest, but I wasn't there for a lot of her recitals. She was big into dance. She was into competitive dance, and I'm not there on Saturdays and Sundays to see her in competitive dance. And but I'd be able to see videos from my wife, who would record it, send it to me, or live stream it to me. And we do, all of us do that. Be able to see our kids play on a, now these fields nowadays all have cameras that stream stuff that you can watch
Yeah.
your kids play soccer, baseball, basketball. And as long as they know that you're watching, and just you just give them a little, hey, I saw you today, great hustle, great defense, great bucket, or hey, why'd you do that, why'd you do that, they know that you're interested and that you're committed to being in their life, even if sometimes you're not there physically. So to me, it's always been important that if I'm not there physically, and I'm on the road traveling, working, they know that I'm thinking about them, and that it's not, our relationship is not just transactional. Our relationship
Yeah.
is more than that. So that's where I kind of make that important separation.
Having kids and what they've taught you, and as you mentioned, there are so many ways to watch what they're doing with all the streaming and the ways that you're able to tap into them and what they're doing, even if you're not with them physically. But having kids, how have they showed you something about life that you didn't know was there, or they have led you to watch for something that you didn't know was there?
Uh, I think what they've taught me, my daughter wasn't into sports growing up. My son is, he's 13. But my daughter was into Taekwondo. She got and stayed in her own. I never pressured my kids in anything, being into something or doing something. I may have started, hey, try this. If they didn't like it, they were out. I never forced them to stay and do anything. But she stayed. She started at, I want to say she started at 2, 3 years old at Taekwondo. And she stayed 10 years and got her black belt, and she did it on her own. She did it, we didn't make her stay. She got her black belt. Granted, after 10 years, she probably was had enough, and she went, she moved on. But and during those 10 years, it wasn't all, you know, pie in the sky, right? There are
Sure.
days where, you know, they don't want to go, or days that they want to do something else, right? They want to dance, or they want to go to to the community center, and do something else, and hang with their friends. And I think the one thing that I just, in watching them, even with my son here, he loves basketball, and he does that year round here in Arizona, which I don't understand. You can play other sports, but that, again, I digress. He loves basketball, and I'm not gonna take the love away from him. So I can say, hey, play baseball now, or play, flag football, or tackle football here, or whatever. Like, he wants to play basketball, he can play basketball. Like, to me, it's about doing what they love, right? And I think that's the most important thing that I see is like as parents, we don't force them into anything
Yeah.
and seeing what they become. And she started in Taekwondo, finished it. Went to competitive dance, finished it. She tried golf for 1 year. Now she lettered as a freshman, not very good. She back and that was it. She didn't want to do it anymore. I was like, okay, that's enough. Move on. And it's the irony is now that she's at Arizona, she loves sports now. Right?
Wow.
Now she wants when I go down there to do a basketball game or whatever. Now she wants to be a part of that. Now she's like, oh, game day is going down there. You guys are gonna be a big game, or U of A is playing Gonzaga or they're playing this UCLA. Can you give me tickets or whatever? Like now I'm in her eyes. But again, I didn't care back then that she didn't like sports or love sports.
Yeah.
So to me, it was again maybe more to me just like I'm not going to push my life onto them.
Yeah.
I'm going to let them discover and become who they are. So that's kind of, I don't know if that answers your question, but I
That's
think that kind of the big thing I learned overall in my experience so far as a parent.
It's fun how life went full circle for you and how she came back without you, like you said, forcing her. It was an example of self-discovery in a way for her. And it's led you both into that sporting world like it has for your son. I want to leave you with this last question, Mike. You said your son loves basketball. What do you cherish most or have cherished most about those opportunities shooting hoops with him?
You know, I love because he is a mini me in many ways, where he talks, and I'm from New York. We all talk. Even if you didn't have the skills, you talk like you had it. So you kind of had to step up on people who didn't have that confidence that you did. So sometimes that kind of so he talks and he loves to talk to me about things, and I'm okay with that, because I want him to be confident, right? I don't
Yeah,
want to be disrespectful, but it's just having those talks where he thinks he can beat me as a 13-year-old in basketball. And of course, I'm not going to let him beat me. I'm one of those dads where I'm not going to let him beat me yet. I want him to earn it to beat me, right? I want him to beat me on his own. So that hasn't happened yet. So I think it's one of those things, just having that time where, um, I'll take him and maybe a couple of buddies and we'll just go to the community center. And, now it's too hot to be outdoors in Arizona. So we're indoors and we'll just go run some plays and I'll just run a little bit just to kind of get a little, but to me, just seeing how much, like the coach just said the other day to my wife, and she passes along to me that he's got such a high basketball IQ. He's not a big kid, he's not an athletic kid, he's not a fast kid, but to me, he's got the foundation to be a good basketball player because he's got a high basketball IQ, which means he knows when to pass the ball. He knows who the open man is. He knows when to take the open shot. He may not make the shot. He may, but he may turn the ball over. But he knows what he has to do. So to me, that's what I've learned and loved. What he's become is kind of cherish the time of him becoming a better, and again, these kids, they don't watch games anymore. They watch clips on YouTube,
for
right? They'll
sure.
watch tons and tons of clips on YouTube. And sometimes when I'm not even around, he's watching them and I don't even know it. So that's where he's learning his stuff, aside from the games and the coaching and the practices and when we go out. But, I'm so proud of him just learning the game. And I think that's the most important thing. Some kids just go up there at that age and start chucking balls and they don't know. They're all looking about getting shots. It's all about volume, right? I used to say, I don't want you being Carmelo. I love Carmelo, but I don't want you being a volume shooter, right? You got 12 points, but you got it on, 22 shots.
Yeah.
That's not what we want. So and I think he realizes that. So we kind of have those talks where, he's just got a high basketball IQ. So that's where I cherish.
He's got a high IQ in basketball. So do you. And if life for Mike Roig was a 15-footer, you knock that thing down, swish, as you have, in a playbook that you run on the court, powered by your mom. She has been there and continues to have that amazing effect on you and your family. Mike Roig, I'm Bryan Fenley. Thanks so much for letting us peek into your life in a 360 way beyond just what you do work-wise.
I appreciate it, Brian. It's a pleasure. And again, I'm at this point in my life where I'm at the age where I'm close to retiring, and I'm happy to give back and kind of tell people what I've been through. And everyone's got their own journeys and their own avenues, but you know what? It's been a great 30 plus years. So I'm happy to talk about it, and I'm happy to talk about not just that, but my personal life that's kind of also intertwined with my professional life.